This is the latest edition of Front Up, and I'm Whitey Willauer, and I've got a great guest today, Tobias Glidden. Tobias, how are you?
I'm very well, Whitey. Lovely to be here.
What does Tobias, where's that come from?
It's Hebrew. It means God is good.
God is good. I see.
Yes.
So you're good.
No, God is good.
Oh, I see. God is good.
But maybe through representation I can be good as well. You know?
Oh, okay. All right. So you've just gone through a big campaign.
Yep.
How does it feel?
It feels a little hard to say, just so many things happened all at once, and now I'm just left kind of sitting here, a little confused as to what to do next. I got lots of things. My life was just kind of on pause for a bit, so
sure.
It's kind of hit the ground running again and see what's next and what's ahead.
Now, were you working the whole time you were running?
I was working, 60 hours, 50 hours a week the whole time. Yeah.
Really? Well, what kind of work do you do?
I work as a stonemason for Jesse Dutra.
Oh, okay.
So I bang stones and put them together into stone walls or patios or pools, whatever people need.
And how's that business doing nowadays?
It's doing very well, very well. People are selling lots of pools.
So you're doing swimming pools?
Yep.
You're doing them in town?
Not yet.
Oh my goodness.
I'm just joking. Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. When I was here as your age, people didn't have swimming pools. We figured that the ocean was good enough for us.
Yep.
So why do people build swimming pools nowadays?
Well, I think it mostly has to do with the fact that people need to spend their money on something, and so it's just another status symbol, another piece of purple cloth.
A piece of purple cloth?
Yep.
What's purple cloth?
Like the Greeks or the Romans, like purple cloth was very valuable. It represented royalty.
I see. I see. Well, tell me about your campaign. What did you learn from it?
Well, I learned I could have won if I had committed to it full time.
Now, how do you know that?
Well, just based on the numbers of like how many hands you shake, how many people you can get involved with, If you're working the majority of the week and you're only spending time talking to people on the weekends, you can't reach those voters you would have really liked to. So I would have liked to do more of that. I guess the other things I learned are just more about organization, why people are polarized on issues. The really interesting thing I learned about that I've been thinking about a lot is how the lines between polarization come mainly from whether people have a long-term or short-term view, regardless of how old or young they are. And that's right where the lines are drawn. And we have to think about how we can get like medium-term goals to mediate the two problems of long-term and short-term goals so that people are united behind issues.
Give me an example.
So like a big divide in like the Mattakit wind turbine project was that, and that I saw was that the people who saw the long-term picture really wanted it, and the people who saw the short-term, it doesn't look very beautiful, were against it. And so where do we find the medium in that project to make it come to fruition based on people's viewpoints, looking out through a span of time?
So you use that as an example?
Yes.
What is it? You got another example?
Another example would be more closer to my campaign. Someone wouldn't look to vote for me just because I'm young, seeing the short-term needs don't outweigh the long-term needs. So they look for someone with more experience, under the premise that someone with more experience will be more politically potent for their needs.
Good point. And if you had gotten in, what would you have been working on? What would you focus on?
All the things I talked about. What direction do we really want to be going in? Moving away from things like cars, moving away from getting our food shipped off. The way I see it is this. Everything on Nantucket is shipped in, okay, or shipped out. Every time we lose a resource, we lose money. So every time the wind blows by and we lose that energy, we're losing money. Mm-hmm. So my idea is, when you think about things, how do you keep money here? How do you keep energy here, regardless of what form that is? So if you have a material that comes in, say sheetrock, for example, how do you use that material to last as long as possible? You keep it dry, maintain it properly, and that's a resource you can really use. When the wind blows by, you want to capture that resource. And through projects like Maintaining Our Wind, using our natural resources to grow food here, to incentivize people to live simpler lives that save them money, through techniques like that, we can save people money and increase the quality of life on the island.
What do you think is the biggest driver of the economy on the island?
The biggest driver of the economy, I think it's just the island itself. Its natural beauty. And the combination of very wealthy, powerful, and politically connected people converging at the same spot, and it creates a compounding effect in regards to like wealth and the excess money that is spent to do things. Millions and millions of dollars, homes and swimming pools, and very exuberant lifestyle activities.
Now, money comes on the island because we export things. What do you think is the biggest export on Nantucket?
Probably our beauty. I haven't really thought about it that much, but I would say the biggest thing we export besides our beauty is money. A huge number of people are working here and then shipping money home. So that's definitely a large percentage of something that's not really tangible, but is
But if they're shipping money off island, it doesn't help the economy, does it?
No, it doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't help our economy, but it does help economies elsewhere, which could be very valuable.
But what is the biggest export, in other words, brings the most amount of dollars into Nantucket?
Aunt Leah's fudge, cranberries. I couldn't really say. There's not a lot of things we export, and that's a big problem. We need to think about how we can build things here to sell elsewhere. We could be exporting energy. We have a lot of wind here. We could be exporting a number of things. Wool. There's more locally sourced things that we could be exporting, and definitely our expertise. I think we have a lot of very intelligent, qualified people in regards to our natural environment that we can share that expertise elsewhere. When people look at our conservation policy, we're exporting our ideas elsewhere. So
that brings money in.
That brings money in.
Yeah. And what about the airport? We have these big airplanes coming in and such things like that. Do you think that's healthy for the environment?
I don't think so, really. I don't think at all. When we and a real shocking example that I found was after 9/11, or as 9/11 was happening, all the planes across the entire United States went down. And for that one day, the temperature rose 2 degrees Celsius across the entire northern hemisphere of America. And that really showed me how much of an impact our flying is having on the world. And we are really having a huge effect on our environment that really can be terribly devastating. And we don't even know how devastating we've been because we're addicted to flying.
Do you think if the majority of the people on the island understand what you're saying? Or accept it?
I think people are beginning to understand a few of the things I'm saying. And it all depends on what perspective they come to. When I'm talking with someone one-on-one, I find I can often relate an issue that they have with the world. And it's just a question of developing enough conversations with someone who's had enough positive conversations with someone who's had a number of negative conversations about the same issue. So you have to come to a balance. If you talk to someone 10 times about an issue that they've talked to someone else 20 times in a negative context, you have to talk to them another 10 times to get that balance. So so that they understand
Mm-hmm.
just how human psychology works.
You know, I think our biggest export is the people that we send off Island that bring the money back on Island. In other words, our tourist trade and our corporate executives that come in here and spend a lot of money. That brings a lot of revenue to the island.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
But it doesn't export. We're not really sending people out to bring money back. They're coming. I feel like they're just constantly coming here.
Yeah. But it's bringing money in, so we've got to export them.
Well, we've got to export the money.
Yeah.
Ultimately, and I think that's done through people saving things and buying newer houses, and
When you begin to get a multiplier effect, if they leave the money here, then they spend it on other things.
Right, and we could be
Yeah.
incredibly wealthy if all the money stayed here. It would be paradise.
Yeah. Now, I'm surprised you haven't mentioned the scallop industry as being a great export.
Oh yeah, just skipped my mind. That's another great one.
Yeah, and that brings to $2 million per year.
Yeah,
And
but at the same, again, I think what's really attracting people the most is our environment. And it's always what really keeps, if you talk to anyone, it's really what keeps people here. It's what they really find special. Something about the ocean and the peace and the quiet and the natural landscape, it's really, really special. And so I think within the context of scalloping, we need to keep that in mind. And the fact that, when you pull a scallop dredge across the water, you're really mowing the grass.
Mhm.
And you're cutting down the eelgrass. And if you scuba dive through the harbor, you'll realize the eelgrass is about this tall. And if you go out to Muskeget, the eelgrass gets up to about 6 feet tall. It's much more nutritious and healthy. And so we need to think about that in the context of our harbor that's being really damaged right now. And there are a lot of benefits to exporting our scallops. So what are some of the negatives? And how can we weigh the two?
Now, what do you think about all of the migrant laborers on the island? Do you think that's good or bad?
I think it's throughout Nantucket's history. It's always been good. It's been part of our history since whaling industry. We always had migrant workers, and I think the problem really comes in with cash under the counter, where people are working and wheeling and dealing in unregulated ways. That's not healthy for them or for their families back home that they're providing for, or for the people here. And then ultimately, you got to remember, I've heard my dad talk about this many times, is you can't get American kids to work cutting fish. It's just really hard. They don't want to work,
Why do you went through high school here, didn't you? Why don't your friends put the shoulder into life?
Well, I think that's a tricky one part is that they want the good jobs. So they want the electric jobs, they want the stonemason jobs, they want the plumbing jobs, the jobs that are going to pay them $20-30 an hour, operating a machine. And they don't want those cheaper jobs that only pay
entry-level jobs.
Entry-level jobs. And so we need people to fill those places. And people from elsewhere inherently work harder because they have a lot more on the line. And so I think that can be extremely beneficial.
So the migrant workers are beneficial, yet there's a downside to them.
Yeah, and it's based off of how we treat them. I think there's a lot of migrant workers who have an incredible value of skills that we never utilize. You talk to any El Salvadorian, Guatemalan, they are all farmers. They have a huge understanding of many different things and cultures, and I think a big problem we have on the island is our inability to transcend that language barrier and talk to them about what they know and use the resources they have instead of just their physical labor. I think that's a big problem the island's been facing. We need to really embrace our diversity that we've built up here that's really special to tackle these complex issues.
Now, I didn't see many Latinos voting here.
No, but I think I haven't looked at the numbers yet, but I think there were more. I was saying, por favor, vota para mí to a number of people, and I'm not sure if they turned out and voted yet, but I'm hoping more and more Latinos will get more involved here because they are a part of the community.
And do you think they're a drain on the economy? In other words, they send money back to Guatemala and down to Salvador, and that's sending dollars away?
Well, the dollars comes here at the same time, so we kind of get the benefit of it, you know. If you were to hire, who else were you going to hire, you know? You can't hire the number of year-round workers we need to sustain the island. And so they're actually really beneficial in the fact that they can fulfill that niche of being a summer worker.
Yeah.
When we look at the, you know, the students that come over from Europe and from South America and from all over the world to work here in the summertime, that really provides a great opportunity where there's a number of people who can't work out that scenario of just working 3 months in the summer. So I think they provide more positive benefits than they do negative.
Yeah, we have an aging population if we don't have the migrant workers and the guest workers. That's one of the problems Japan has now, is that they don't have the younger generation working. And the younger generation is what creates productivity. Matter of fact, the whaling industry couldn't have survived unless they had younger people, because who's going to go up mast and furl the sails at the age of 30 or 35? You know?
Right.
So it requires a younger generation to create the productivity.
Yeah, well then I think, you know, when we get into this debate more seriously, we have to ask ourselves, are we encouraging our children to do things that are really beneficial for them? In our society, we encourage them to go out and get a very successful job and make a very large sum of money and to be happy. I don't necessarily believing that going out, leaving the island permanently is a great solution, or going out and making large sums of money and working in a career. I think there's a lot to be gained by going out in the world and experience what's going on, and taking that experience and coming back to the island saying, how can I contribute? This is my hometown. I want to be more a part of that. And that has a lot more to do with the way I was raised, not to go out and be successful unto myself, but to be part of a community and help that grow. So I'm much more interested in that, and I find a lot more enjoyment than I do success unto myself.
Now, you have worked off island. What kind of work have you done off island?
I've worked as a cook, and I've worked as a gardener, landscaper.
And whereabouts?
In San Francisco.
Really?
Yep. All around the California area. I've done a little bit of carpentry in upstate New York as well. So
if you stay on the island, are you going to continue to be a cook, a gardener, a mason?
Yeah, those are all things I love. I'm really interested in architecture and food. They're the two fundamental things that connect people. So gardening and masonry are proxies to those two fundamentals, and so I'm constantly just curious about them and learning new things and experimenting with new ways of building with things or cooking food, and it's just a constant evolution of my own learning and understanding of the world.
Now, your classmates from the high school here, what are they doing now?
They're doing tons of different things. They're all over the world. Everything you can imagine kids in my high school doing, they're doing.
And are they coming back here, or are they staying here?
I think a very small percentage do. I would say 5 or 10% do. You know, they come back for a few summers and then they kind of find something else and move on.
So they're not coming back and working within the economy such as you're doing?
No, they're not.
And why do you think that's happening? They used to not do that.
Yeah, I think, you know, again, we encourage our young people to go out and experience the world and be successful out there, and tell them that there's no real success here, and we say that, you know, it's just a cold, miserable place in the wintertime and there's nothing to do, which I entirely disagree with. And we don't cultivate our young people with the qualities that allow them to live in the place, you know, that allow them to read a book year-round, to be curious about the environment that they're in. We don't cultivate that within our children, and that's why they're encouraged to excel and go off elsewhere to experience life.
And what do you think made you take the path that you're taking? What was?
You know, just constantly curious and learning. So, and I have a huge ambition, and I'm not afraid to do things. So I'm just constantly in that cycle of learning and absorbing things. And whatever comes into my path within the context of making the world a better place, I want to pick up.
And then how does running for the Board of Selectmen fit into all of that?
It fits in because I think fundamentally Nantucket is a really special place for one main reason, is that we have a huge amount of exposure to the rest of the world in the volume of tourists, the wealthy, and the politicians that come here. And so, but we also have a very small population that can be touched, and intellectually and emotionally. And I believe that if we can work together as a group on Nantucket to develop a more sustainable, resilient economy here, that can be an example for the rest of the country to follow. And through that, we can really start to tackle some of these big issues like climate change, biodiversity. You know, where are we going to get food from in 40 years? You know, how are we going to produce our own energy? You know, a number of very serious issues that are facing humanity. We don't really have good solutions for getting the word out to people and getting it serious. And so I see Nantucket as a place that we can really start to touch people in that way and say, wow, look how good we're living our lives. We're really happy here, and we're doing good by the rest of the world through that. And ultimately through that, we increase our quality of life. And so that message can be passed on to other people. And that, to me, is really why I really ran and will continue to run and continue to be involved the way I have been.
Now, how are you going to prepare for, are you going to run next year?
I think so.
How are you going to prepare for that? How are you going to learn more?
Well, you know, this first few days I've just been relaxing and just trying to take it easy, you know, catching up on my sleep. But I think I was invited to be on a few committees, and so I'm definitely looking into that. I'm going to be more involved, going to more meetings, the Board of Selectmen meetings, Finance Committee meetings. I have my own gardening project on the island I'm getting started called Nantucket Garden Parties. It's all volunteer-based, people cultivating their own garden. So just by my nature of being involved in the community, I'm going to continue to pursue everything that I'm interested in.
Yeah. What committees were you invited to on?
I was invited to be on the Shellfish Implementation Plan.
Okay.
And that was just the other day. And then I'm obviously still really interested in the Energy Committee. Right. As you know from the past. So.
Right, I know that.
So, and whatever, you know, I was talking actually to Bob DaCosta and Bruce Miller and yourself about this the other night. You know, people were saying, well, what are you going to do? What committees would you like to be on? And my approach was, hey, like, I've put myself out in the community and showed in the community what I'm good at and what I'm interested in. And so I'd like my elders to say, hey, Toby, I think you'd be really good at like getting on this committee. I think your skills of communication or whatever it may be is going to be really helpful for this committee. Because I think I have something really unique, a unique perspective that can be really useful wherever I'm at. And it's a question of optimizing that. And that's where elders are really useful because they've seen a lot and they see many different people over the course of their lives. And so they can put people in the right place.
Now, you have a bachelor's degree presently?
No, I do not.
You do not?
Nope.
Now you went to college, didn't you?
I went to Concordia University for 6 months, and I went to San Francisco Institute of Architecture for about a year.
So are you thinking of continuing architecture?
Yeah. You know, I've actually taken a few classes this past winter, and I just kind of, as I learn things, I like intensive workshops, learning about things. I'm a very hands-on learner, so being in a classroom learning book stuff is really just not the way I learn. You know, I'd rather go to Peru and learn how they build their bamboo structures than sit in a classroom and have someone explain it to me. Yeah, it's just not as interesting.
I found that until I got my hands around something, I didn't learn it very well.
Yeah.
Luckily, I dropped out of college after my sophomore year, went to the Far East, and I came back, and all the courses meant a lot more to me.
Yeah. And that's, you know, for me, like I have a huge interest in learning. I read a ton. I absorb knowledge. I love to do that. It was something that was really instilled in me as a youth. And so it's definitely an option of learning. I think a big part that plays to me is that in this day and age we live in, there's such an urgency to deal with problems that are going on in the world globally, that I feel that I kind of want to juggle axes. I want to be involved in the community, but also learning. And it's a very difficult, I'd love to spend 10 years and go get a doctorate about architecture and travel the world and see things, but we really need help. I think the world really needs help. And it's really quite serious. And so I'm here to take that seriously.
Tell me, if I asked you the kind of questions that you expected, or there's other questions I should have asked you?
I think people should always ask more questions about what their motives are and what creates their motives. So if I was you in future interviews, I'm just more interested in why people do things and like why they were created to be the person they are and who helped in being part of that.
So did I ask you why?
I think you kind of did. I think you could go into it in more detail. Because I think it's really interesting when you get down to like who a person really is. You can start to relate to them more. And,
It's a good point. A good point. Well, we've now run through our allotted time, so
Good.
I want to thank you very much for coming in, and good luck.
Well, thank you.
And continue your efforts. I think you're going to make a big addition to the island.
I'm hoping everyone else can. It's not about me. It's about the community.
Thank you. Right.
Thanks.